This is the Sewing Circle podcast presented by Hanky Code. I'm Rebecca Vanderkoy, here to introduce to you up-and-coming queer artists and the powerful stories behind their work. Today, I am so excited to have Amelia Day joining me. She's a talented folk rock artist whose hits include Eastward of Eden, Therapist's Wet Dream, Skipping Down the Sidewalk, and a bunch more. Amelia,
Hey,
thank you so much for joining me today.
thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
I'm glad to have you here. So, since we chatted a few months ago, you've been pretty busy. You've had multiple different shows. You also just released your latest single, The Songwriter. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the process of writing that song.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. So this song I first started writing actually a couple of years ago. I think like maybe 3 years ago at this point, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was in a songwriting class and I wish I could remember the prompt, but I feel like it was something like write a song about someone you admire or something like that. And so I had been just listening to Joni Mitchell nonstop over the past year.
Yeah.
For some reason, I didn't start listening to her until college, which is insane. But I feel like maybe even better in some ways because I just appreciated her more, having more knowledge about just the industry and songwriting as a craft.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started writing about Joni for that project, for that assignment, and really liked the direction things were headed in. But I kind of like let it sit for a while. And honestly, it was only like it wasn't quite as fleshed out as I wanted it to be, but it was like, gotta get this in by Friday or something, you know?
Yeah.
So I returned to it like I don't even know, like maybe a year ago, a year and a half ago.
Hmm.
And was like, oh my goodness, I really like what I have so far. I don't like this verse. I don't like the way this chorus is framed, and just kind of did some rewriting and then did some more writing, just kind of finishing like the arc of basically following her artist journey. And so I didn't actually finish the song until like I guess a year ago, a little over a year ago, and then went into recording it this summer. But yeah, it was kind of a like over 2 year process of writing it, obviously with a lot of space in between. But it's kind of cool to have something be both somewhat immediate, but also kind of sitting in the back, able to just kind of come up with ideas on the back burner too.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. I'm also curious, like, letting it kind of sit and then coming back to it, is that kind of helpful for coming up with new ideas or like looking at it with fresh eyes?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think a lot of the times I will just kind of follow a burst of inspiration on something, and then maybe write a little bit beyond that, but let it genuinely sit for a minute.
Yeah.
Because it's not, yeah, it's not necessarily that you're ignoring it or that you aren't going to return to it, but I do think when you give something space to sit in the back of your mind, like your mind is still working on it, even though you might not consciously be all the time. However, I don't think it's necessary to let something sit for a year, but
Fair enough.
um, but yeah, when I have been working on a song and kind of reaching like a writer's block moment, it's always helpful to kind of give it a week and then return back to it, and I'll have entirely fresh eyes on just, oh, like I could write this angle for the second verse when I didn't have any ideas before or something.
Yeah, absolutely. So on social media, you've been sharing a bit more like country and Americana type music, which I've been really enjoying. And I'm
Thanks.
curious, like, how has your music changed and grown over your career this far?
Oh man, I started out like almost exclusively releasing like folk music. Um,
Hmm.
Not even with much like of a rock edge, but pretty like classically folk, indie folk music. My first release was a little different, where it was kind of jazz influenced, and I've been leaning into that a lot more lately.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, at this point, I kind of reached this, I don't know, this moment where I was like, have quote unquote like branded myself as a folk artist, like not, through any intention, but like just in my
Yeah.
head more than anything. But I was like, I'm writing these songs that are a lot more on the rock side. I'm writing these songs that are like soul pop or funk or, all sorts of different genres that are very different from what I've released so far. And I kind of had to sit down and be like, I just really love these songs and I don't want to give them to someone else. They feel still authentically me. I'm just gonna release them still. And as long as they're still cohesive within project in some way, whether it's sonically, instrumentally, thematically,
Yeah.
like I still want to put them out. They're still me. And that's I was really nervous about that, but it's actually been received pretty well, which is exciting. And right now, I'm definitely leaning more into a lot of rock influence with the stuff that I'm going to be putting out after these next couple songs, which I'm very very excited about.
That is exciting. And I feel like there's also something to be said for kind of just like allowing yourself to pursue what is interesting you most creatively rather than kind
Yeah,
of boxing yourself in. So I think that's a really cool thing.
thank you. Yeah, I just like listen to a ton of different genres and like used to listen to a lot of folk and I still listen to a lot of folk, but it's not quite as dominant in my like listening habits as it used to be, and that's kind of being reflected in the music that I'm making too.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So kind of speaking of that, what artists do you especially draw inspiration from?
Ooh, this is a great a great question. I love as far as artists that are like making music right now,
Hmm.
um, I love Madison Cunningham. I love Remy Wolf, Father John Misty, Chapel Roan, of course, classic. Especially like more of her recent stuff and the stuff that's like to be released, like The
Yeah,
Giver and Subway. Like, I'm so excited about. I
me
mean, she's
too.
doing kind of this thing where like she's going into like country rock, Americana rock with The Giver slash pop, and then like
Yeah,
Subway's like super 90s. So it's cool to see that in the pop artist who's like as huge as she is, that she's not feeling like she needs to go just completely clean pop, like we'd
yeah.
seen a lot in like the 2010s, you know?
Hmm.
Um, as far as like older artists, I mean, Joni's been more recent inspiration of mine. Simon and Garfunkel, I listened to all the time growing up. I love Queen, I love the Beatles. Led Zeppelin is a huge influence, even though like I don't go quite so far to the rock side.
Yeah,
Um, and then Fleetwood Mac I've been listening to them quite a bit over the last like 6 months, year, especially.
classic. Can't go wrong with them, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So, kind of sticking in the vein of like inspiration, where do you draw inspiration for your songs for your different projects?
Yeah, it really depends on what's going on in my life. I think sometimes it is based on just concepts that I've been sitting with. Like with
Yeah.
Eastward of Eden, I had been involved in a lot of discussion about climate change, as well as like was in the midst of reading a lot of mythology. And so I was
Hmm.
like, that's where kind of the idea of viewing humanity's rise and fall through climate change through the lens of like almost a mythological story kind of came to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I'll write about kind of this transition from childhood to adulthood and the existentialism that kind of comes with it. But at the same time, yeah, I think the biggest inspiration honestly comes from the tough things in life. And I think the most inspired that I feel is usually going to be in a period of like just being really depressed, or maybe 2 months, getting like a couple months outside of that where it's less
Yeah.
sadness and more just like frustration. Because that as that is definitely a more motivating force than sadness, unfortunately.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
kind of going along with that, like definitely some of your music is pretty vulnerable with like the topics that it explores. And so I'm wondering, how were you able to reach a place where you felt comfortable really like singing and sharing those things with the world?
Yeah, it's funny because I used to be like super private with like anything having to do with feelings in that way. Like I
Yeah.
remember like I kept my crushes like completely to myself. Like I wouldn't tell anyone. It was like the most terrifying secret in the world. Um And then I feel like, yeah, I think I just surrounded myself with a community of people that was very, that I really trusted and began opening up about that stuff. It even probably went, you kind of have to swing the pendulum to to one side to find a healthy balance in the middle. I feel like I definitely got to a point where I was like sharing too much because I was finally comfortable saying
Right.
stuff. Not necessarily in my music, but yeah, I think just building community around myself that I really trusted and that I really felt safe around, just let me feel comfortable with like, I don't care if there are any kind of negative reactions to me talking openly about being queer or me like sharing just stuff that I went through. Obviously
Yeah.
respectfully and openly. Um, but I've got my people around me and I think I kind of realized like the art that I love the best, the art that I am most proud of writing is when I don't try to like hide something from the page or keep
Yeah.
something, yeah, from being put down because you can feel that in the music. If you're not really writing about yourself or if you're, trying to tiptoe around something, like your music isn't gonna be as effective because you're people can sense that you're not being entirely authentic. And so that's something that I've learned and seen in just responses to my own music. Like my most probably vulnerable song that I have out right now, Therapist Wet Dream, is like the one that people have probably connected with the most, aside from like Eastward of Eden. And so that was
Yeah.
really cool to see, like this song that was very specific to a certain period of my life and an experience that I went through. Because I was as straightforward and vulnerable and honest as I was, like even though it was very specific and there were lots of details that were particular to me, like it's really resonated with people because of that, because those emotions come through with more clarity, I feel like. So
No, that
yeah,
like
but it is a weird
completely
thing.
makes sense. No, that
Yeah,
like completely makes sense though. And I do think it's such an interesting thing because I think kind of across the board, like when people are putting out, whether it's music or other things that are like a lot more like really deeply personal, you would think like, oh, this is something really specific to me. Like, are people really going to resonate? But I feel like
yeah,
every time it's always like that's the piece of work that people are always like really clinging to the most because like that genuineness, even if it's not the exact same story, I think it just like people feel more seen and it kind of translates over, which is a really cool
yeah.
thing.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, the emotions just come through clearer than if
Yeah.
you're being kind of vague and general about things. Like, I'm in so much pain and this is so hard. Like, obviously, those are more generally relatable. Like, everyone can relate to
Right.
that emotion, but you're not going to feel it as much because you're not opening up. It's the same thing just with, yeah, with friendships and with relationships, everything. Like, just you gotta let the kind of insecurities and things be open in there. But it is, yeah, it is weird to kind of have like almost journal entries like public for a lot of people. I don't know, it's a very odd thing.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel that. I'm not a songwriter, obviously, but I write stuff and I put it out, and it is always kind of like some of the things I choose to write, I'm like, yeah, it's a little more personal. This is like a little scary, but I feel like there's always kind of the return of like it resonating with people and like making people feel like seen with what they're going through. So I think whether it's
Yeah,
writing or music or anything, like there's something to be said for that.
absolutely, absolutely.
So you mentioned like kind of some of the queerness in your music, and I'm wondering like what does queerness in your work mean to you?
mm. I it's really interesting because I didn't feel really comfortable kind of sharing that part of myself when I first started releasing music. Like it's kind of
Yeah,
been through the arc of like my career so far that I've even felt comfortable sharing that because I wasn't out to everybody when I first started putting music out.
yeah,
And honestly, I think a big crux of like, I mean, the way that I've like come out publicly to like extended family and stuff is like through my music, through releasing music that is just
oh
like
wow,
very honest about it. Um, so it really is one of those things where I kind of reached a point where once I started once I had music that I really wanted to put out that was just like openly queer, um, I was like, this is the song that I'm most passionate about. I really love it, and I feel like I need to have this be spoken about in my art because it is such a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
And so that actually guided like me being openly out, like even in my like family life, like not with my immediate family, but my extended family, um, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for me, like I want my queerness to come through my music in a very natural way and not in a contrived way or a way that's like trying to like target a queer audience and like bring in a certain demographic and stuff. It's like, no, it's just that's just me and it's gonna come through my music and I'm not gonna shy away from that coming through my music. It's a huge
Yeah.
part of my community and my friends and my experiences. They are very particular to that. And yeah, I found the people that I have kind of gathered around my music who've really appreciated that, like, are just some of the coolest, sweetest people in the world. And I don't know, it just resonates with them, I hope, on a very real level, and on a very personal level. And so, yeah, I've gotten a lot more comfortable with that, in the last year and a half to the point where like this next project that I'm gonna be putting out is like very, very openly queer, very much using like she, her pronouns to describe the person and everything. I think pretty much every song really is. Um, and yeah, part of that's scary, but I think it's necessary because we didn't, I don't know, I didn't even in high school have that many artists that were doing that. It was like Haley Kiyoko and like
Yeah.
Tegan and Sarah and I'm only 22. So like it's I just feel really blessed to be able to release music like that and not be like ostracizing myself or a certain community. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
My very rambly answer.
No, that completely makes sense though. And you did mention an upcoming project, so I have to ask, what, if anything, can you tell us about what you're working on right now?
Yeah, oh my goodness. I so right now I'm in the midst of the songwriter is a part of like a trilogy of
Okay.
songs that are all kind of exploring different aspects of like transitioning from girlhood into womanhood and the assumptions and things that change. Like I believe there are a lot of things that are prized in girlhood that are then kind of seen as maybe negative in womanhood, and kind of exploring that particular life transition. And so that's called like the Clementine trilogy. And so there are three songs part of that, which is the songwriter, which is already out, and
Hmm.
then two songs which are going to come out in the next like 2 to 3 months, which is Mama, which is like a very like folk rock, like it's so fun. It's so fun. I'm very excited for that one.
I
And then
can't wait.
Clementine, which is a very thanks. Clementine's a very like intimate kind of like almost like speaking to your inner child kind of song and was drawn from both like my own experiences, honestly like in many ways growing up queer, but also like with friends of mine who've gone through like some really really tough stuff in their childhood and just looking at them like, man, like I you were so vulnerable and you were so sensitive and you shouldn't have had to go through that, but like
Yeah.
you are still so strong and like so resilient, you know? Like, yeah. Like there's one line that's like plucked too early before you're ripe, like having to have seen things like before,
Right.
you know, they were necessarily ready for it. So it's less about, you know, speaking to myself than just like kind of special people in my lives, like just yeah, stuff that they, you know, when you see kind of their inner wounded kid, you know, you're like, God, like
Yeah.
nobody should have had to go through that at any age, but especially at that age, and it's still, yeah,
Absolutely.
very present. So yeah, with all that, it is a very hopeful song, but there is, you know, kind of that tinge of vulnerability there. But then yeah, then I'm gonna be heading into a completely new era of stuff, which is
Ooh.
very much more rock centered. very much more like a lot of like pretty upbeat, like um I'm even trying to like basically the idea of the project is like the grieving process post a relationship, and like what that processing process is like,
Yeah,
um and how it comes in like multiple stages. There's like the sadness, the anger, the almost like acceptance phase, and kind of working through all of those emotions, and also just like finding out things as you're working through those emotions that you maybe didn't know while you were in the relationship. And yeah, lots of revelations that I've had in therapy and with friends and other people. And so it's yeah, this is definitely the most vulnerable project I'll release. It is completely autobiographical.
yeah,
And it's yeah, it's all kind of themed around like travel location, because in my what my experience was kind of centered around like a road trip and was centered around like Nashville versus LA. And so
right.
there's a lot of themes of that and themes of pride and ego. And I believe the project will be called Ego Trip. So I'm very excited about that.
That sounds
Um,
really exciting. Are you thinking
Thanks.
like an EP, or do you kind of not know what it's going to look like yet?
It's gonna be an EP, and then I can't speak too much about future things, but I have been writing quite a bit for this. Like you said,
Yeah,
asked about inspiration. Like this is probably this whole situation that I was in is definitely the hardest thing that I've ever had to go through, and I'm now in a part of the healing process where I'm able to write about it and able to be inspired by it rather than just debilitated.
yeah,
So I've been writing a lot, and a lot of things that I really love and that really fit together in a cohesive project. And so I've been writing more than I maybe anticipated I would, and I have ideas. I have ideas. So things, yeah, bigger projects in the future. But I don't even, yeah, I say like, I can't say, like, I don't even quite know what it looks like yet either. So,
fair enough.
um,
Fair enough.
but yes, possible album on the horizon. Ooh.
Well, that's all really exciting though. I like both the trilogy as well as this other kind of more like vulnerable rock-based project. I'm very excited to hear both of them.
Thanks, thanks. Yeah,
So,
it's gonna be
as
fun.
we kind of mentioned, we've talked about a few different projects and different things that you've released. Is there any particular one that you're really right now especially proud of?
Ooh, I would say, I think like there are individual songs that I'm like the most proud of. And the two that I am the most proud of are Eastward of Eden, and Therapist Wet Dream. Like I think with both of them, I for very different reasons. Eastward of Eden, I just like am really proud of that concept, and I think I explored that in a way that has been effective and has been able to be read through the lens of climate change and of just like how humans have kind of screwed up the world, how we're kind of the enemy of the rest of nature and
Yeah,
and all that stuff, like viewing it from that bird's eye lens.
yeah. It's a very
I'm
poignant
really proud
song
of
I've
it.
been thinking about. I feel like lately, especially, it's been out for a minute, but I don't know, lately
Yeah.
I've been like, yeah, this song, it really hits right now.
Yeah, I wish it weren't as relevant as it still is. You know, like
Yeah, yeah,
I would love for it to get to a point where it's just completely out of touch and not related
yeah,
to our reality. But yeah, no, it definitely, obviously it's mostly centered around climate stuff, but it's also around just political choices and just
yeah,
general hubris in the government. And yeah, a lot of things that ring, unfortunately, especially true right now.
yeah,
And so yeah, I I'm really proud of that song and that like I really took a lot of time with the lyrics and making sure each line was really adding something, um,
yeah,
highlighting some new aspect of what I was trying to express. And then also like I love that it was something like bigger than myself, but still authentic to me and what I care about, but that it wasn't just like I'm only writing about like, ah, this happened to me and this was a really hard like personal experience, which like is so important to write about as well. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm proud of like that it is a bigger thing than just beyond my own self and my own experiences, you know?
absolutely.
Um, yeah, and the Therapist Wet Dream is, yeah, my most vulnerable song, and it's fairly self-deprecating and like just pretty straightforward with what I was experiencing at that time, of just being kind of like pulled between two different people, pulled between two very different situations, and feeling like I couldn't do anything without like hurting several people and just kind of being lost in that.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, it was a very confusing place for my mind to be, and instead of like approaching it from like taking one side or the other, I just kind of approached it from that gray area of like, no, I am like just really confused. I am really overwhelmed, and
yeah,
I don't like hurting people, and but that is kind of inevitably is what has to happen in this situation. And so yeah, it was that was kind of where my head was at with it. And it's been cool that people have really felt that alongside me, which is cool.
yeah. No, that is very cool, and I love both of those songs. Um,
Thanks.
kind of changing gears a little bit. I'm sure that touring is on your mind. I mean, you have a tour upcoming. You've had a couple different
Yeah.
live shows and stuff recently. And I'm wondering, what do you enjoy most about performing live?
Oh my goodness. I that's a good I just love I really do think, and this is gonna sound probably a little cheesy, but like because it's like what makes it different from like performing on my own like to nobody. It's like the fact that you have an audience there, like that really is like the deciding factor. And so it really is like the connection that you have with the audience and being able
Yeah,
to like you're not performing at them, you're not like this show that everybody's watching, and you're not like just a separate thing, but it's like a conversation, and being able to kind of feed off of the audience's energy, their reactions to things, lean more into certain styles of things based on how they're feeling. I've recently like gotten way more comfortable with like just the talking in between songs aspect, in a more laid back sense, where I'm like able to kind of like joke with audience members, or if I see something happen, like kind of say something about it, or it
yeah.
just, play off of the current moment instead of like, this is what I usually say about this song and I'm following this script. It's like, no, I'm just talking. Sometimes I have no idea what I'm gonna say, and it just comes out, and I'll say something like ridiculous, and it's just super fun. Those are like my favorite
Yeah.
moments of the shows. Um, yeah, it's the live part of it. It's not. I like leaving certain things kind of up to chance a little bit. Like I like giving myself space to improvise, whether it's just through talking or through like doing certain riffs. I like being as prepared as possible, but
Hmm.
that's what keeps it feeling energetic and like live and electric, and that's the difference between, yeah, just listening to something recorded versus being there in that moment. Is like things are going to be different, and that's
Right.
awesome and that's
Anything could
fun.
happen.
Yeah, so that's what I would say. Yeah, connection with the audience, as well as just getting to always play around with the songs and sing them. I'm singing the same songs like most of the time, but every time I kind of play around with something a little different, and that keeps it really fun and exciting for me, as well as
Yeah.
hopefully the audience.
So, kind of speaking of that, are there any particular songs that you have been really especially liking performing live?
Yes, I honestly, Clementine has, which is super funny because usually the songs that I enjoy the most performing live are the more energetic ones, the ones where I'm like doing more crazy vocal stuff and belting and whatever. But
Yeah.
Clementine is like probably the hardest song of the set list, for tour that I am going to sing, because it is so soft and so intimate, and to make it stand out, to make it catch people's attention, you have to put everything into it. It's not like built in a way where like, oh yeah, this is like a super fast beat and there's a lot of belting stuff like woo super. It's like,
Yeah.
no, this is just a very very soft song. The words are so important and the emotion is important, that like yeah, you have to kind of give everything into it.
Yeah.
And it's been really cool, like when I've been able to do that, like just the visceral experience of like relating that song like puts me in the headspace of like what I was thinking about when writing it, and like just really feeling that emotion like for the people that I kind of wrote it about, and then also like for like stuff that I went through in high school with being like a queer kid in a small town. Luckily
Yeah.
not with my family, but definitely had some pretty not great experiences with homophobia and stuff, and like man,
Yeah.
I shouldn't have had to experience that. I was too young. I mean, nobody should, but it was just, yeah, I was especially vulnerable, you know? And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's that's probably ironically my favorite to sing because it's the one that I am able to like connect with the most, maybe like when I am performing it. So, like, and those times are really like that's really when I'm having the most fun or like the most fulfillment, is when I really am in the emotion fully of the song that I'm singing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I say Clementine. The songwriter's also been pretty fun because there's just like a lot of different parts of it. It's almost like three songs in one and a bit, with like the different energies in each of the verses.
Yeah.
Um, and then I've recently, like, if beyond just my like original stuff, I've been doing this like cover of Fever mashed up with Silhouette, and that is
Ooh.
so fun. It is so I love singing Fever. And it's just like I just get to play around with like a ton of different like vocal tones and like little riffs and stuff, and it's like so different every single time I sing it. Like I just kind of really dance around the beats and the melody, and it's yeah, it's just so enjoyable. So that's what I would say. I don't know.
I love that. No, that's amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I'm really excited for your tour and also for your multiple new projects. Lots of exciting things to look forward to.
Thank you so much.